All right, welcome everybody. We'll call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for St. Andrews on January 27th, 2026. I'll note all members of council are here with the exception of Deputy Mayor Akaji. As well, welcome to Mr. Gopin. I believe the only agenda item is the zoning bylaw, Mr. Spear, said 25-01. So
Yeah, and all we're really do, excuse me, everybody, all we're really doing is getting feedback from the consultation sessions. And if we have time, I'm not sure, Xander, if you look at some of the correspondence, if you're going to, so that's going to be included. Okay, great.
So we'll pass it over to Mr. Gopin.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Neal. Thank you, everybody. We've had 3 public consultations on the zoning bylaw, and I guess we had the public presentation was at the end of November. And it's been fairly quiet. We haven't heard a whole lot. I think most people were out at 1 or 2 of the consultations. We did one here a week ago. That was a couple weeks ago, and then we did a Zoom one, and then we did one in Bayside last Thursday, and they were all pretty well attended. I think there were 20 or so people at each one, and we did get some feedback, and I will sort of, we haven't gone through and done the what we heard document yet, like we've done for the municipal plan. We haven't gotten PAC's views yet. We haven't sent it to the provincial departments. So this is kind of just very preliminary to give you guys a sense of what we're hearing. But it's fairly quiet. The biggest thing, and I think there was a letter from Lisa Caskey today, or at least I got a letter about it. It's kind of the increased density within the town plat. And I think that's specifically the U2 zone. And what council can do, it's really up to council. If you feel like that is too much of a change, it is too much density to introduce at this time, or potential density, too much change with new commercial opportunities, you can peel it back. You can peel back the U2 zone, make sure it applies to the existing apartment buildings, things like that are kind of in the MR1 zone now. But if you revert most of the town plat, not revert, but if you say, we want to keep things more the way they are now in the town plat, it can go to the U1 zone, most of those properties. And that is very, very similar to the service residential zone. It only allows for home-based businesses, for dwelling units. So I think that is a decision for council to think about. And I think, that's something you might hear more of. I will say we're not hearing it from a lot of people. And we heard it during the municipal plan consultations, because the municipal plan pointed the direction there. When PAC reviewed the municipal plan, they were supportive of that direction. But I understand the sensitivity around it. So I really think, the staff recommendation is currently, it's what we proposed with the expansion of the U2 zoning. But I think that's really a decision council can make, and it wouldn't affect the overall municipal plan. It would, maybe a few more things would come to council for rezonings, a few more things for variances, but that I think is going to be the, especially within the town, I think that's going to be the big issue, at least from what I'm hearing. I don't know if that's something you want to discuss. Yeah, we can discuss that particular point, and then I can talk about some other points.
Feel free. I think we might as well tackle the points.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to me that's the biggest Some of the other ones I'll address, but I think the province is a little bit more clear in the direction you should go. But
Right.
this one I think is really,
Okay. So because I didn't bring my plan or my bylaws, I apologize. Can you just, so under the U2 zoning as proposed, it would allow, can you just clarify for me what it would allow?
yeah. So it would allow up to 8 dwelling units on a lot, dependent on the lot size. So it's a dwelling unit per 125 square meters. But the maximum would be 8. So even if you had 10,000 square meters, you'd still only be able to have 8.
But kind of tied into this, though, you're still proposing, because it used to be the parking requirements kind of regulated how big of a building people could put on a lot, right? Because they had to make, so like Compass Housing had to make so many parking spaces for the number of units they had. Under this current plan, you've restricted the parking to nothing at this point, right?
Yeah.
And so people could fill up a lot potentially up to the maximum size. So I guess what I'm saying is, what other restrictions or conditions that could be in place to restrict the 8-unit dwelling, or are there any?
There are. So lot coverage would be a big one.
Yeah.
So I believe I should really get a copy of the bylaw open, so I'm not just.
Did you want my paper?
Let me see if I have one.
Sorry, was there an email from Lee today? Did you say?
It might have just been to me. Okay, here we go.
did get one yesterday, maybe?
Lisa Caskey, not Lee Heenan. Okay, so the U2 zone, the lot coverage, believe.
So while he's looking at that, I guess one thing people brought up, and Xander can answer this after, is are we encouraging developers, say, to buy 2 or 3 lots, consolidate them, and build? Now, there's a lot of properties that have heritage designations on them, but just as many more that don't. So that's not an impossible situation. It's just to be upfront. So maybe Xander can address kind of that once he gets.
Yeah, it should be somewhere between 35 and 45%, but that's actually something that seems to be left out, but I don't think that was on purpose. So that's a good catch. But typically it's the lot coverage, so that would limit the building to, or the buildings to a certain amount of the lot area, and then the rest has to be open space, landscaped, parking, or trees, essentially. So sorry, Chris, what was the question I was looking?
Sorry. One thing that came up, whether it's reasonable or not, is that somebody could buy multiple lots, say consolidate them to put up 8 dwelling units. And maybe we want it, maybe we don't. There's not a comment on that, but is there anything to stop that? Say, if you had a certain part of town, like there's newer along Carlton and Parr Street near the community college, most of those are like from the 60s and 70s homes, they're not heritage areas. So is that an area where somebody could, say buy 2 bungalows, tear them down to put up a 3-story apartment building?
Well, similar to the lot on Harriet. Harriet, across from that's a double lot, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so if they met the minimum lot size, then and all their standards, and there were no heritage restrictions, in theory, yeah, you could buy up lots and consolidate them. But I think, you could do that now with.
But you need a rezoning, and if it happens.
To go up to any more than 4 units. Yeah.
Not trying to be hard to get along with, by the way. I'm just throwing back some of the questions.
Yeah, and
So
I think
council-
these are good. These are really good things for council to consider, because you're kind of going through the scenarios of what could happen.
The public meeting at the Independent every morning is that we're going to put 8
units on every lot in the town of St. Andrews. So that's got people all astir. And there's a big crowd every morning at the Independent over it. So we need to be very clear on this 8-unit lot part, because right now we're being told that we've thrown the parking out the window, and that anybody who has space in their backyard can have an 8-unit lot or an 8-unit apartment building. So I've been approached by 4 or 5 people out of the Independent. So just FYI.
So
Xander, just
Yeah.
to clarify that again, with regards to the 8 units, that would
Yeah.
have to be, would that not be the primary use of the lot?
that would be a potential main use.
Right.
Yeah.
So would this allow for, to Councillor Heenan's point, like 8 or 7, say, small homes in your backyard type thing?
Potentially, yes.
It could.
Yeah, if they met lot coverage and yeah. Yeah, and so I'd say if council feels like that's too much, then that zone can get peeled back to the existing apartment buildings.
But if we went, because the current bylaw only has 4, right?
In the service residential zone, yeah.
The service residential zone. So let's just say a project came along that we thought was a good project, that was an earlier scenario where somebody bought up a block and wanted to put up an apartment building. Council could rezone that to U3
Yeah,
and then allow it, right?
yeah.
So if you wanted to take the U2 and reduce it, you might be able to go to the U3 or zone that allows you to control it a little better than allow, if the 8-unit scares you, is all I'm saying is you can bring it down to the 4.
That would be the U1 zone.
Or the U1,
Yeah.
right? U1, so you limit, yeah, U1.
We potentially could reduce it to U1 for the town plat, and then entertain requests for zoning changes,
Yeah.
which would bump it up to a U3.
Yeah, people, we wouldn't have to request it, it's just people came with projects, councils still control the size of anything bigger than 4 dwelling units.
Yeah.
I would definitely support going back to the 4 units and allow for council to have a little more guidance. I think that that's necessary, because I really feel that there's valid points for the 8 units, and I'm seeing them. And I think if we go back to our original with the 4, and as Councillor Harlan said, if we decide, if someone buys 3 houses together, 3 old houses, and tears them down, they have to come through council. And I think that puts the onus back on council, but it gives council a bit of control. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
I guess I'm still a little confused. I was on the assumption that, again, the 4 or the 8-unit, I'm going to call them apartment buildings, was the primary use of the lot. So if the secondary accessory buildings could be
Okay, so I know, yeah.
7 units, then that's, I mean, I would definitely have an issue with that. And even scaling back to the U1, then it's far more likely that somebody, well, it'd be more likely that somebody has room for 4 small short-term rentals on their lot than they do 8.
Yeah, so no, sorry. Yeah, I misunderstood. So the dwellings would be the main use.
Right.
So it's a little, this bylaw is a little bit less prescriptive as to them having to be all attached. So if you think about the Harbor Town development, although those are, kind of larger units. Thinking of those as a main use, even though they're detached, but not
Right.
that you could have an 8-unit apartment building and then 8 more separate.
Or even a single family dwelling with 7 or 8 accessory buildings. That's what I'm concerned about.
So you could have basically one accessory dwelling unit as a secondary use, but
Right.
you could have multiple dwelling units on the lot.
What differentiates? I'm getting fuzzier. and
I think it's
fuzzier.
whether they're attached or detached.
Okay,
I think that's the question.
okay.
So the current zoning bylaw basically says you can have one main dwelling building on the lot, whether that's 1, 2, 3, or 4 units in the service residential zone. And then you can have an accessory dwelling unit, which may be detached, but you can't detach any more than one dwelling unit. This is a little bit more flexible in that it says these are the amount of dwelling units you can have, and then how they are laid out on the lot, as long as there's a main dwelling unit, the number still is capped, but they wouldn't necessarily have to all be attached.
Right. And what we're talking about is for the town plat, which is Water Street to help me out.
Prince of Wales.
Prince of
That's
Wales,
a
yeah.
question, we're not sure.
Well, it's
Well, it's
shown
on the
on the
zoning
map,
map.
yeah.
For my seat, I'm less concerned. I'm in favor of more densification. This was 2 plans ago. I think enabling more housing in the limited space that we have is a good move, although it should be guided by council. No worries. So more people, I think, is good, but what does concern me is proliferation of home-based businesses outside of the traditional downtown. We approved a couple in the past, and you just see how they're very busy, extra lighting, extra signage. I think business should be downtown, and that's kind of the way it always was. So more people, more housing, but less businesses that are not down in the historic business district would be my leaning. Thanks.
If I may, though, there is a limit, though, Councillor Gumichel, on how many businesses can go downtown. We're almost at full capacity in the last 3 or 4 years. And some of these home-based businesses wouldn't make sense financially. So like a hairdressing shop, for instance, it was approved up in years ago now beside the community college, made more sense in the basement of someone's home than it would have them having to pay, premium rent in the downtown area, which deserves premium rent. And so I think there should be consideration for some flexibility. I agree, a gas station up in the plat is not appropriate, but there's 2 sides to the argument.
Well, thank you, Chris, but there's always 2 sides to every argument. I've seen just in the last few years, we have businesses moving from downtown into what was, questionably residents, and, parking their boat in the yard and doing all these things. And I've brought that to the attention of the planner, and nothing's been done. It just, so, my friend David.
Well, just to be
Peterson
clear
pointed
on
out-
that one, we've had this discussion, but
Yeah,
nothing's been done. It's legally allowed. The zoning bylaw, current zoning bylaw does not allow, or does allow what's going on there. Is maybe that we should have cleaned that up years ago. But that particular property that I'm sure everyone knows you're talking about is legally allowed to do what it's doing. It has been looked at several times.
Just, Mac, it might actually be helpful to go to the zoning map for the town plat in there. I think it is in the bylaw. It's just
It is, yeah.
because it's not the entire town plat. The proposal currently is it's along Par and Montague, as well as Prince of Wales and parts of Water Street, but it's not actually the entire town plat currently.
That's for the U2.
For the U2, yeah. To address Councillor Gumichel's point, or just to clarify what would be allowed. So the U2 zone would allow a main use of a small commercial use, no bigger than 200 meters squared. What that includes, I know that one of your concerns is tourism-based businesses. It doesn't include those. And they are certainly smaller in scale. The U1 zone would really limit it to home-based businesses, very, very similar to what you have now.
Matt, can you take your cursor and where's U2?
It's the orange. So basically along Montague and Par.
Yeah, and in between. And so, yeah, that, is something that's kind of what I'm suggesting of council. I think certainly the Par and Montague, that kind of interior, those would be where I would start peeling back if you want to peel back. I think there could be, keeping some of the ones along Water Street that are in the current mixed use zone, along Prince of Wales, maybe Harriet, some of those would make potential sense to keep as U2. But I really think that's up to council.
Sorry, Xander, say again what you would recommend keeping what as U2?
Well, I think, this is my number one recommendation.
Yeah.
Number two, if you want to introduce a little bit more density with a little bit more caution, peel it back off of Montague and Par and in between. And then if you really want to, oh yeah, that's great. That's helpful, Mac.
Yeah. Thanks, Mac.
I'm sorry, I can't, we haven't been able to get me on the Wi-Fi. I have a new computer. Otherwise I'm a little bit more on top of this stuff. So leave the core basically yellow with a few little orange where there are existing MR1 properties, and leave the edges kind of orange. That would be my number two recommendation. And then number three, which is essentially leaving things as they are now, just spot zone the existing MR1 properties as U2 and leave the rest as U1.
Just for a little more to council, like he's talking along Prince of Wales, those tend to be larger lots anyway, as opposed to like quarter-acre lots in the historic downtown. So along Prince of Wales, I think that's reasonable. Not that I have a vote or probably shouldn't express an opinion, but just to give mine, probably you said you'd leave Queen as U2 as well?
Well, probably not. I think if you're peeling back, I would peel back, like start with the middle.
Yeah.
And leave the edges. And then if you really want to leave things the way they are now and not increase the potential for more population density or businesses, all yellow, or more or less all yellow, except spot zone ones that exist now.
May I just ask a question? We went from 4, let's say, to 8, right?
Yeah.
So we really doubled it.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of wondering, like, if you went to 6, and then if do you know what I'm just throwing it out there, not
Yeah,
suggesting it. I'm just saying, it seems to me like we were 4.
Yeah.
To go to 8 is quite a difference. We go to 6 with the council having to approve anything larger than that, it becomes a lot. Well, it comes best to both worlds, perhaps. That's just all. Thanks.
So the lots, oh, do I have to?
All right.
The lots along Prince of Wales, you said those tend to be a bit bigger.
Why thinking like where Kira is and.
Yeah, those ones we are U3.
Yeah.
Because they're
Yeah.
kind of large commercial uses now. I think realistically, the ones on Prince of Wales that would be U2 are not. They are smaller lots, like the ones around Victoria Terrace.
That
Right.
end, yeah.
But your suggestion, Xander, about potentially doing I like the wording of gentle densification. I think that's
Yeah.
in our statements of public interest.
Yeah.
Doing that on the edges.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be Harriet
Yeah.
and Prince of Wales around. Yeah, and Augusta. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I think Augustus, were you near the MBCC?
Yeah.
Thinking about zone transitions too, so where you have the U3 zone transitioning with the U2 to it, like I think that's a logical thing to do. So kind of getting rid of, I guess option number 2 would be getting rid of a lot of this and here.
Yeah.
Peeling that back.
And council, I guess we're kind of looking for a bit of an answer tonight because we got to get the next zoning. If we're going to go to meeting here and objections, all that, we'd like to get something that you're fairly comfortable with. You certainly can still think about it, but as we ask these questions, if you can give us direction, it'd be.
I am more comfortable with that recommendation than as it currently stands. I'll put that out on the table.
I am as well. A happy medium.
Yeah. And that would limit the potential a bit because we're doing this intensity thing. And so we're saying that the more dwelling units you have, the more that's a more intense use. And so the commercial users should scale up with that. So this is also that number 2 option. It's going to limit the ability of people to develop businesses on their property within the middle of the town plat.
Right.
I think that.
Okay.
Well, unless they come.
Yeah,
forward.
obviously you can always come to
Yeah,
council.
we're
for
not
zoning for
eliminating
variances.
the potential to upzone. We're just
Right.
reducing the flexibility or.
Yeah,
or
and there's
reducing-
guidance in the municipal plan
Provided-
around
Right.
rezonings and
Yeah,
So
Okay.
council have more control to upzone stuff than.
absolutely.
okay.
We play a little, like just a pretend game, like, so what could happen at the lot across from the store? It's a pretty big lot. Would that be a 6 or an 8?
By across you mean
This one here, it's for sale.
The corner.
yeah. Yeah, so that one currently, and from what it sounds like the council is saying, that's U2. But it's 1 lot, or is it 2 lots or 1 lot?
It's a double lot.
The double
It
lot.
was sold as a double lot.
So, and you have to measure it because it's probably smaller. So, it would be 101 unit per 125 square meters. So if they were combined, might cap out at 6. I can't.
We have to be a little careful too, I think, on a specific project like this.
Yeah.
Passionate out in public. I understand what you're saying, Kurt. It's just,
Visualize.
yeah.
What potentially look like. I think it's already got a plan.
But regardless, the lot still requires X amount of space
Yeah,
for landscape.
undeveloped space,
Undeveloped space. Thank you.
non-building.
And public for public use or whatever we call it. And
amenity space. And there's
Right.
also in the new zoning, the proposed zoning bylaw, there are standards for multi-unit dwellings.
right,
So even those ones that are not going to come to council for rezoning or to PAC for variances, there's still the requirement for urban design standards.
That are approved at your level.
They're in the bylaw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, confirmed at your level.
Yes. Yes. We will not issue permits unless they are met.
and there's still standards for parking.
There's standards for lot coverage and standards under building code for accessible parking.
Right.
And if parking lots are developed, then there are standards for the parking lots.
But the old 1.25 per dwelling unit's gone.
That's
correct?
gone, yeah.
That's gone in this version of the bylaw. Just
Yeah.
So you understand. You can add it back, but right now it's been removed.
And
Which leads has more potential for more housing.
yes, I to be honest, there have been more projects that I have seen killed by not being able to meet those parking minimums than I have by most other things here. And it's been a discussion that's been had at council before, and I think at the times previously there were quite, I think there was concern around heritage properties, and what if those got knocked down to develop, the more density. And now there is, I know it's not perfect, or not everybody would say it's perfect. There is a heritage bylaw that protects those properties from being demolished. And there's nothing stopping developers from putting in parking spaces, and I expect they will in most cases. And it's the municipal plan also points to parking permits, on-street parking permits. So there's ways to deal with the problems of parking without stopping apartment buildings getting built because they can't have 1.25 parking spaces per unit. So a few other things we've heard, and to be honest, I think that is one of the biggest ones. The R1 zone. So these are more rural. These next to the R1 zone, along the 127, there are these kind of weird patchy areas, and they're because of what is identified by the province in their mapping as a cleared field. You kind of go right here, some of these ones, those little patchy areas, they're cleared fields in some cases, but in some cases they're really just mowed lawns. And so we've had some people say, hey, this is just, I don't understand, and it's really confusing. I've got multiple like just tons of zones on my property, and you can find these by GPS. Like I was explaining to somebody in a meeting, you can pull up the zoning map online. You can use your phone. You can actually go on your property and see where they begin and end. But some of them are so small, and it just this one especially here is kind of weird. We think it does make sense to clean up a lot of it and just put them in the R2 zone. They're still identified in the municipal plan as agriculture priority areas. So we have to look a little bit closer if they wanted to subdivide the properties and just do a little bit of ground truthing. And if there's really no agricultural potential there, then great. But from a zoning point of view, we don't need to get that detailed just for future land use. So that's a change we would recommend is cleaning up those patches.
Sorry, just to be a little more specific, cleaning them up from to what?
Changing them from the R1 zone to the R2 zone. So more of a continuous red band instead of these little R1 patches.
Comment on that.
Yeah.
I got a lot of feedback after the Bayside meeting. And there was two concerns. Number one was the constant use of acronyms the names of the zones. Most people didn't know what you were talking about, you know, R1, R2, R3, you know, what am I in? And
Mhm.
and then one gentleman I talked to, I think he's got 5 zones.
Yeah, I talked to that guy.
You know, and he's
Yeah.
got 40 acres. I've only got 3 zones and I've got over 100 acres. And I still don't know what that little R1 zone is down at the end of my driveway. But maybe it's because it's adjacent to the Bayside Hall. I have no idea. And it's just like, and people are looking at it and they say, well, I want to build a camp. Who's going to tell me where the zone is? You know, which zone am I building in, or am I building in both zones? And that it's the meeting in Bayside. There were a lot of frustrated people left there because they didn't have sufficient information ahead of time. And rather than calling the zones by what they were, you know, just calling them R1, R2. And I've got comments later on the hazard zones. But there's just a lot of unknowns and a lot of very frustrated people that it has not been adequately explained. And they just don't know where they stand with their property. They feel deep down in, probably it's reduced the value of the property. And there's just a lack of information available. Now, not unless they want to go read all these documents and that type of thing. And for the layman to do that, I don't mind reading them. I can work my way through them, but trying to explain them to my constituents, very difficult. Their frustration level is very high, which makes it even more difficult to explain it to them, because you don't get the same cooperation when people are very frustrated. And sometimes you just can't give them a reason. What's the physical feature here that causes this zone to change? I've tried to go through that with them, you know, changing the physical feature may result in a different zone. And they said, well, there's nothing there. Yeah, they just can't visualize what has caused these multiple zones to appear on a single property. And I know I'm part of mine. I don't know why there's R1 down the end of my driveway, but anyway, it's R1. Then you go up in the woods a little further where my house is, and it's R2, I think. Anyway, I thought down next to the road would be R2.
Yeah, that might be one of those patches that should be cleaned up.
Right. But Sandra, to your point, one of the things I heard you and Alex say a number of times in that meeting in Bayside, and actually in the meeting here at the arena, was, you know, if you have some confusion around your property because it's not perfect, like, you know, the fact that we've got these little blobs of white in mostly an R2 area, right? It needs to get fixed up. And there could be other specifics around a homeowner. And you said, give us a call.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at your property and see if there's a problem.
Yeah.
That process can happen. Like, when can that, is there a time frame on that process, or? Because if there is, I think we need to ensure that the public is aware of that.
It's best if it happens before you set the date for a hearing of objections. Some of them might be very minor. We might be able to, consider them not substantial, especially, the municipal plan, if it still has that policy guidance around the prime agricultural areas. But it's best if we're not making substantial changes after we set the date for a public hearing. And I have spoken to a few people since that meeting. And I think I've been able to explain to them why it is this way, where is the mapping coming from? The watershed, the Shamcook watershed exists in the current Bayside and Shamcook rural plans, and that hasn't changed. That's provincial mapping. Pretty much all of the C zones are based on environmental features that are mapped by the province. And no, the province isn't always perfect, but there is that process, as you mentioned, Councillor Weir, that it can be fixed. So that is part of it. Yeah. There's a few things that do need to be cleaned up, and so we would do that.
And I think that's something that we need to ensure there's good public knowledge around. Just reinforcing that if people look at the maps and they have questions about their property or the zoning on their property, they absolutely should pick up the phone and call Xander or Alex.
Yeah.
And have that conversation to ensure that it's correct.
Yeah, it's happened. Just last week, and this is again why we do the public consultation. It jogs people to realize that council passes it, things could change, and they should let us know. And as I'm talking to you tonight, I'm saying we should make some of these changes based on what people have said. So it's important, and there is follow through.
Yeah.
The gentleman that has the 40 acres, I was privileged enough to sit beside at the meeting, and yes, he was a bit frustrated, but then you talked to him afterwards, and I walked out with him and I said, "Are you feeling better?" And he said, "Absolutely." So, I mean, it did work because he left the meeting laughing versus frustrated when he first came in. So I think that, like what I said was you need to talk to Xander, and he went right over and talked to you. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, because I talked to him out in the park lot, that he was a lot more contented than he was when he came in. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, I think the frustration had returned the next day. I talked to him for 45 minutes. And his wife is going through the plan and the zoning bylaw. And I understand she's going through it in great detail and preparing a lot of notes, and will probably be making a presentation or assisting in making a presentation, because the two of them are, they just moved here. The comment made me was, maybe I'm not going to stay. He said, I moved here to get rid of this foolishness, and here I am right back into it. So so I don't know. I think I had him laughing at the end of it too, but he doesn't stay in that mood. So.
Councillor Weir, I guess the one thing, we've had examples where there's been incompatible uses of lands in the rural areas in the past is kind of the reason. So we've only got 3 zones. Well, I guess 2 with the conservations. So there's got to be a happy medium somewhere where people, I know it's always, they want to be able to do what they want with their land without much regulation. I get that. We're all the same. I live rurally too, as you know, and so I get it. But at the flip side, they've also got to be concerned if something comes in beside them. So that's kind of the measurement the planners are trying to do, is to find, create different zones so basically you won't have a Ford plant beside 2 or 3 houses type of thing. Ridiculous example, but easy one to do. Or even around the industrial park in Bayside. I mean, people that move right beside it, where it currently is, really can't complain. There's industrial park there, right? If it expands, I'm not talking about the current thing as is, people have to be aware of it. And I guess that's just the other type of stuff that this is trying to do. And so I don't think one zone is sufficient. I think they're open to 2 or 3, but whatever people want, it's just, there's got to be something that prevents this incompatible type of development besides, well, housing mostly people don't like having the wrong thing besides personal residence or farms and stuff. And we're certainly wide open. This is why we're having this meeting, and the zoning bylaws is still a working living document, but it's just to try to figure out what people are willing to live with on both sides. What's their property, what's beside them. They've used a lot of stuff to try to keep the, compatible stuff along the roads, but the bigger things kind of off the beaten path, as we like to say, and growing up. So, so it's going to be away from a lot of the people there. So I guess the questions you should ask people, and this is everybody, if you don't like this zone, you want less regulation, well, what are you willing to live with beside you? That's got to be, do you want that controlled, or do you just want kind of I'll use a ridiculous example, anything goes zone, which most of us don't want, but it's just to try to figure out, and that's planning at it, it's an art, not a science, right? And you got to find out what the people like. It's trying to go. And the other thing too to remember is this can be changed after you guys approve it. If there's stuff that people want to do, they come back, make a good case. So this person with 40 acres, maybe the convergence of the acres are in the middle, several hundred meters away from any other properties. And so it makes sense to say, whatever, consolidate it, variance, rezone, whatever the phrase you need to use at the time. And so that's easy enough to change too. I know for any people right across New Brunswick that were in prior LSDs, it's a big change. I get that. But part of the reason in some of those meetings, some people like the idea of having a little more control, not a lot, but a little more control. And others are a little more control of my neighbors, but not of me type of thing. But that's what we're trying to find with the direction of everybody here. But again, remembering that this isn't once this is done, this isn't a steel door that locks moving forward. People come in with a good idea and we see it doesn't really affect. We have processes in there to change specific pieces of property. And for that matter, future councils can say, this zone doesn't really work for what we intended. Maybe we'll eliminate it, or whatever the phrase is, consolidate it, rename it, change the conditions, etc. So I guess I still think it's important. We'd like to get to the end here and have future councils just amend a document, because it'll probably put it off by 2 years or better. But it's just to try to remind people that we're trying to not take away what's on their land as much as we are trying to protect them from what could be beside them just as much. And so, if they come back, well, I want this. So then you say, okay, I see it, but would you be happy if we open it up more and there's something beside you that is much more intense than you originally hoped?
Which is the case of Brooklyn, go to Brooklyn, Cars Ridge, strip mines. I got myself an e-bike this summer and went further afield than I have for a long time. The forestry, the clear cuts, the mining that's happening. It doesn't seem like anybody's.
I'm not really chairing the meeting, but yeah, Councilor.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, get back to your initial question that you gave us. I support the cleaning up of the R1 patches, and making them R2, and that helps alleviate a lot of frustration for a lot of people having multiple zones on their property. So I do support that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. There's a few other really, really minor things that we've just kind of discovered as we keep going through the document.
Bring in the typos. Another one I heard, it's more in the municipal plan side meeting we were having, but they're jumping into zoning questions. They were just saying, wait for the zoning bylaw. Then they didn't get questioned, but some people were worried about being able to subdivide on I think it was like what was considered agricultural property. And maybe this R1 to R, I just want you to address
Yeah.
that. So, because I did hear it from 2 or 3
Yeah,
people.
actually, that's a good one. So the R3 zone, the rural resource zone, that's the brown zone that's more in the interior. And that's, I guess, what we're calling the agricultural zone. It allows for agriculture, forestry, some of those more intensive resource development uses with general standards in the bylaw. And it does limit subdivision to 5 acres or more. And this is a change, and it's something that some people are certainly not happy with. We have addressed it, I think, in a lot of meetings. And this is an area, it's the Department of Agriculture. They are very clear. There's statements of public interest on this. There have to be areas of municipalities where there are rural areas like this that are set aside for the development of these larger resource uses. And if lots start getting too small in those areas, the resource use cannot be developed. There ends up being complaints, even if people moved in knowing what was next to them. It does happen. And so the province is very clear. You need to set this aside. 5 acres, if you look across the country at some of these agricultural standards, 5 acres is really small. And this is really a standard that needs to be enacted across the province, and is in places that are updating their plans. So, it's happening in the southeast in the Moncton area. It's going to happen in the Fundy area. And one of the actually exciting things about St. Andrews for our region is there is agriculture that's happening here. There's not a ton of there is some livestock actually. There's pork producers locally and beef producers. And that's really great. You can get your food locally. You can go to the spice box. There's more of these food businesses opening, and having that local agriculture is really important. Another point that I'll make on not being able to subdivide, and this is a slightly controversial thing to say, but if land is seen as being valuable for intense residential subdivisions like 1 acre, 1 acre, 1 acre, as has historically been allowed, the value of that land actually makes it so that young people who want to get into agriculture can't do it. So preserving areas that, again, they're away from the road. We've been careful to zone these away from the road, so there's still that potential. And if folks have property that extends to the road, they still have the potential to do subdivisions in the R2 zone. It's just the land further back, making sure that can be preserved for agriculture, and limiting subdivision is important for that. Doesn't mean that homes can't be developed there. They just need to have one of those main resource development uses, which paradoxically includes conservation. So if you want to just have a little house and not develop anything else, leave the trees, that works in the rural resource zone. That's great. So I think the biggest impact is limiting subdivisions, but there's really good planning rationale for that, and the province is very strong on that.
Oh, sorry. I thought you had a comment.
Xander, I just want to be sure I heard that right. So if land abuts the road, then it can be subdivided.
Yes, unless there are some properties that are in the flip program. So they are identifying themselves as agricultural properties for tax purposes. They're assessed as agricultural properties.
That's
Right.
property taxes.
Yeah,
Right. Okay. but
those
if
are
they're-
properties that we put entirely into this zone.
Okay, but if they're not that.
Yeah.
But if they come up against the road,
127 specifically.
right?
I think there's some other ones. I think if it's a public road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
But just in those ones in the flip program, more or less being in the flip program, the property owners basically volunteering that this whole thing's going to be agriculture, right? It shouldn't
Right.
become an issue for the current landowner because
Yeah.
Right.
they're running a farming operation of some sort. So
Yeah.
it'd be, be unusual for that beef farmer to decide tomorrow they want to put up a, 20 lot subdivision. So nothing's being forced on them. It's actually
Yeah.
through their own decision.
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, let's see. Fences. We went through a lot of work to amend Z22 with Z2211, which fixed up the fence section that currently existed. And then we left it out of the new zoning bylaw. So this only would apply within the urban service boundary. And we would just put that amendment Z2211 into it. So fences are regulated. I will throw out there that Fredericton, St. John, they don't regulate fences at all. And we do spend a lot of time enforcing fence violations, which may not be the biggest deal, but our intent was not to say St. Andrew should cease to regulate fences. So unless council really wants to say, you know what, we're done with fences, we'll put that back in.
We're not done with fences.
Okay.
I'll answer for the rest of
All
the
right.
council. Fences
Okay.
make good neighbors or something along that line.
Oh, I don't know. Good neighbors make good fences. That's what I've learned.
Sounds right. Just a quick question. though.
Yeah.
So you're saying you're not putting them out to the R2 zone or the rural zone?
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting we do. I just want to go, but hypothetically, a neighbor can throw a fence right on their property line.
Yes. Now, if it's over 2 meters, if the fence is over 2 meters, it becomes a structure. And then it's regulated like any structure needs to be set back. But that's been the way it's worked.
Yeah, and I'm perfectly okay with that, just so council understands, and everyone, especially the 3 councilors from the new wards are okay with that? All right.
In one of the previous cities I lived, fence had to be 6 inches from the property line. And I know I had a neighbor put one on the property line and it was made of metal, so I didn't make him tear it down, but told him I didn't appreciate it. But do we have anything?
In town, yes. Well, no, but yes. You have, and it sounds like you will, and it's actually a meter off the property line here. And that's so you can do work on your fence. A lot of enforcements happen because people don't know or they don't care, and then they put the fence on the property line. If you get a letter from your neighbor saying they're fine with it, then great. You don't even need a variance. But usually when that happens, the neighbor is not aware, they get upset, and then we have to do enforcement, and it's really not fun. But in town, yes, where you have smaller lots, I think the idea is out in the rural, and again, there haven't been these regulations, and we're trying to be as sensitive as possible with the regulations that are introduced into the rural areas. Salvage yards, like where you break down cars and things like that, they're currently just an allowed use in the industrial zone, only the industrial zone, but they can cause enough problems that they really should be used as subject to terms and conditions. So even if a salvage yard is going to open, and there is some industrial zoning along the road, along the 127. If you've ever, I'll pick on Penfield. Don't want that. So there are some other, there's beautiful pristine salvage yards. Salvage yards do not have to be eyesores, and it's important to be able to break down those things. But right outside St. Stephen, don't want that. So having a little bit more control on that particular use in the industrial zone is something we would recommend. We did not get very specific with flag signs, and this is only in the urban service boundary. So currently flag signs, they have to be attached to a wall where they're allowed. There's regulations on how many flags. You can only have one flag or projecting sign. All that stuff is still there. But we didn't actually say the flag sign had to be attached to the wall, which would open the door to feather signs, which are those, they're just on a base and they kind of stick up, and they haven't traditionally been allowed. I think one was allowed with the variance. Probably still want to only allow those by variance. That would be my advice. So we would change that definition to say a flag sign has to be attached to a wall. Okay. One other one, this is very specific, but the zoning around the Rossmount, the R2 zone just doesn't extend as far as it should have there. We just kind of did it from the road and didn't actually look at the property there and what's actually going on. The actual hotel and everything is set back quite a ways from the road. So we should bump that R2 zone up a little bit. And that would give them some opportunity to expand and grow, but only within that R2 zone, which is pretty, it's not super limited, but it's not unlike anything you wouldn't already see on the road or what they're already doing.
On that property, I remember when Mr. Bruin owned it.
I think your mic went off again by accident.
When Mr. Bruin owned it, he was always trying to develop the barn, which is even further back.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think some of the subsequent owners have tried to do something with it. I don't go there like I used to when he was there. He was such a wonderful gentleman that I spent a lot of time there. But, there is other structures on that property that could be developed.
Yeah. One thing that would be really important is the top of that property is Shamcook Mountain, and the owners have always been very generous and let it be open to the public. I think this is in the municipal plan. It's identified as a recreation priority area. There's ever the opportunity to make it truly public. Through it, if there's a subdivision or something, the opportunity comes up, land for public purposes. It's really important. I don't think there's any intention to ever develop that, but to really protect it and make sure it stays in the public interest. Historically, it's fascinating with the old, John Loves Julie etched from 1874. So it's we would not extend the zoning all the way up. Also would be impossible to develop. That's all the notes I have. I mean, if folks heard other things during the public meetings that they wanted to bring up, happy to talk about that. But I think we covered all the big ones that I heard.
One thing, I was just going through the written comments we had again. We touched on most of them. One was classifying recreational and other green space areas in the town, the lower town, as C1 instead of C2 to protect them from development, if that was a concern or an issue or something.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. And I think it's coming up a little bit in some of the municipal plan discussions. And I did have a question on that today from a property owner. So I think there's There's no the C1 zone is not. I mean, it can be used for recreation, but it's definitely not a public recreation zone. I think there's some historical concern around certain shoreline areas being designated as public use. That's not what this is. It really is about conservation. And what the way that the C1 zone does allow existing property rights to continue and expand is through the pre-existing use designation. And I don't think there's any, and there's no property that is entirely within the C1 zone that wouldn't have the ability to develop new buildings within, it's probably the R1 or U1 zone. But even within the C1 zone, there's the allowance of a pre-existing use and accessory structures associated with that. That is not the same thing as a legally non-conforming use. Legally non-conforming uses can't expand, or it's very complicated. The pre-existing use has the right to expand, but it will be subject to a WAWA permit, probably a watercourse and wetland alteration permit, because they're probably within 30 meters of a watercourse or wetland. If they're within 30 meters of a provincially significant wetland, they probably will not be able to get a WAWA permit, even if the land use is allowed in the zoning.
The other one I wanted to talk about was natural hazard overlay, high risk as well as low risk. And I only looked at the industrial zone.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at the map, and there's a whole bunch of things, you basically can't do much. Put up a structure 55 square meters, which is not very big. And you got to have the electricity and everything so many feet off the ground and all that type of stuff. But then when you look at the zoning map of the Bayside Port, the entire asphalt portion of the wharf is ONH-1. Now, there it is. It's a working wharf. I don't know what might happen there at some point in time. I suspect when the time comes, it will be raised. But then there's the other parts of it where the concrete part of the wharf is long-term hazard. Now, I realize it does go down at a slope. I would say 16 to 18 inches would be the maximum drop as you go in on the asphalt. And then where the long-term area is, this currently used to be 2 warehouses. Now it's 1 warehouse, one of which is a coal store, and the little dog leg at the back, I can't get that one at all. I've walked by there 100 times. There's a rock wall that's 50 feet high or something. They haven't taken it out yet. And I think eventually it will come out. And then over just upshore a bit, still on port property, there's another area that is marked as long-term high risk. That's right in prime laydown area for the wharf. Now we look at the coal store and the dry store that's alongside of it. It's owned by Lineage, the largest refrigerated warehouse company in the world that does $8 billion in business. And I think if they do anything there, they're going to do it in a responsible manner. And I don't think council really should be sitting back saying, you can't do this because it's against our zoning bylaw. And it quite amazes me that we would create a bylaw that would hinder job creation and in an area that is intended to be job creation. It's in an industrial zone. And they're not irresponsible landowners. You know, they're the biggest in the world. So, while we may think we're very wise around this table, I think they have 26,000 employees, many of whom are engineers and environmentalists and everything else. So I think we're being a little presumptuous to tell them how they're going to run the business. You just might laugh at us and just say bye, and jobs are all gone. And so it's something I think should be looked at. I think we can unintentionally put ourselves in very awkward positions. Mr. Spear mentioned, you know, there's 3 houses here and Ford wants to put up a plant. I'm sure we'd find something to do with those 3 houses rather than tell Ford to take a hike. You know, it just doesn't make sense to someone like me that has devoted their life to job creation and the increase of good paying jobs. And I'm just scared we're going to put some zoning bylaws in there that, you know, somebody like Vern Faulkner goes in and tells them, oh, this is not up to code. You know, they have so much expertise that they would, again, they would find it a bit ridiculous. So, but that's my concern with those 2 zones. I realize they exist in other parts of the municipality, but as far as where they exist at the port, it could be detrimental to economic development in that area if we decided to try to enforce it or whatever. I'm sure they operate ports all over the world. They're certainly aware of sea level rise, and I'm sure they have long-term plans in place to look after it.
So, Xander, has there been any concern raised by anyone with respect to the port and the zone that it's currently in, or the restrictions that there may be?
No, but I don't think it's an unreasonable concern. I mean, it's based on the elevation that's there. So to Councillor Weir's point, they should probably know better than to develop in that area. It's given the use, it's not going to necessarily be a public safety risk as much as residential development in flood hazard areas or those kinds of things. We were not particularly discriminatory in how we, looked at these elevations. We said, if this is the elevation, this is the zoning it gets. And there could be carve outs. I wonder also about the Huntsman and the biological station, where there's wharves down there. So I council thinks there should be an allowance for those kinds of industrial uses in those areas. Like that is something that could be changed through language probably in the text, but say it's up to council.
You will be getting a presentation from them. I just can't get a hold of the Canadian president of Lineage, and myself and the president of Lineage and Mark Clark.
At this point, it's up to council.
But I mean to present to you. Now, if you've got a closed mind to it,
well, it's just at this point, it's up to council if changes are going to be made. This is really council's draft at this point.
So they would make a presentation to council.
Or,
well,
I mean, but well,
Xander.
you can, but I think when Xander first started, you were more open to the changes.
Yeah.
Correct? That's what he was saying, that there could be carve outs. And I think what he means is maybe it's a good, your point is taken, and maybe we don't put tight restrictions like the industrial park. We have to look at.
Yeah, that's the direction we got from council. I don't see any serious issues with that. I mean, the province reviewed the plan. They reviewed the municipal plan. So we haven't sent the zoning bylaw to the province yet, and they might have feedback on this as well.
But if council, so let's just say you have the ONH2 zone tends to be the more, or allows the most, less restrictive.
Yeah.
So could you just take that whole area and would you feel comfortable ONH2 and call it a day? Or is there still restrictions, council, where into that particular zone? Because I think they want to do, sea level rise has to be addressed where it's a concern. But if, you know, the first one.
ONH2 basically says as long as you build above a certain elevation.
And have to provide diagram, or, you know, have to
Yeah.
provide professional diagrams, which you
They're
said
going to be doing
in the
anyways.
industrial park won't be an issue. It gives them wide open. They just have to satisfy that they're able to withstand the next 50, 100 years worth of weather.
Anyway, it was something that somebody tried to bring up in Bayside, both the industrial zone. Somebody talked over them. And I think they were going to talk about the extension of it to the north. But
Yeah, I think they had concerns about it.
yeah,
But then we
they
came back
never
to
got
them. They didn't.
Yeah, they didn't.
And Mark Clark was there and he didn't say anything, but
Oh, no, he wants.
So Councilor Weir, I guess, from your perspective, is it that, so maybe I'll start with Xander first. Does those two zones have to be shown on that wharf just because it's a sea level rise zone? Or it could just be all the industrial zone?
I mean, you can either there's a bunch of different ways to deal with it. If you change it so it's all ONH2, that's the lower priority, then everything has to be above a certain elevation. And I don't think they're putting basements in. So if they really should be doing it anyways, it would be a bad investment not to. It's the NH1 that kind of strongly limits development. The other way to do it would be you could put text in the NH1 that says so long as the use is allowed in the zone underneath, because it's an overlay zone. So in the industrial, you wouldn't be able to do this on Patrick Street where the zone exists. You could have a use allowed in the industrial zone.
So as the professional, what would you say would be the better route to follow?
I think putting it into the NH2 NH2, where it intersects the industrial park and probably the Huntsman and the biological station as well. That still means they do have to address it, but there's no, you can't develop it, just develop at a certain elevation.
Well, the thing is, it's developed now. It's a working wharf.
Yeah.
And it'll continue to be a working.
Yeah, and that can continue. It's just new buildings if they're developed.
Well, they're not gonna build one out there, but they just put shore power in. I'm not sure how big the building was, but certainly a lot of electricity going through a small structure right on the wharf. I don't know if it's in one or two. It's in one or the other, but
So I guess, so back to, and Councilor Work, as you brought it up, is the only reason I'm addressing you directly, is that if they just took out the ONHA 1 zone in the industrial park area and just kind of called it ONH 2, so there'd have to be at least a sober second look by zoning and make sure they're not, whatever, I know they're responsible builders, but whatever, someone gets the idea to put a 10-foot basement in for some reason, then they can say, well, not only is it not allowed, it's really not recommended because 5 years you could be, pumping salt water out of here type of thing. So you'd be okay with that?
well, it's not me so much as I don't want them, I want them to feel welcome in the community. I don't want us to have bylaws that restrict, their development and their growth. And
Somewhere in between. I know what you're saying, but by definition, bylaws are there to restrict development and growth to a certain extent. So, someone doesn't put in the equivalent of whatever, a 50-story building there, for instance. See, that's why we have a certain bylaws. I know they're not looking at that, but just again, ridiculous example. So maybe we look at that.
Yeah.
Indicating we've heard you, and that's okay. Did I follow you?
I think that's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
the NH2 for all of that
Now,
area.
This is me saying it. So council, is everyone else okay with that? Are there more questions or a different point of view?
I'm uncomfortable if we don't have a direct conversation with people from the wharf or from the port.
Does council need that, or can they discuss just with Xander? They can come to council, but it sounded like Councilor Weir said they're just going right to the planners to discuss it.
And I'm fine with that as long as it happens. But what Xander said is it needs to happen before this goes to public.
Yeah, but your public, we haven't put out a notice for public hearing or objections yet. The one in February is for the municipal plan,
Right.
just so we've got time.
Right. But and I'm fine. I think it makes a bit more sense for them to go directly to Xander and have the discussion with Xander.
I mean, I can
From my
see
perspective.
if there's any issues with that, I mean, if they say we want to develop under this level, it's, I mean, I guess if the municipality doesn't think that's your concern, then that's one thing. I can't professionally say I would support that.
Right.
Well, I think, as much as Councilor Weir, I know wants to encourage development. I don't think any of us want to oppose it, but at the same time, it's our responsibility to ensure that development is done in a responsible way, right? And like I said, to your point, if they're developing, if they're putting waste oil receptacles or something like that, and they're building them in a spot that's, like I said, below level where we can anticipate sea level rise, you could have a catastrophic failure of something that could contaminate into the St. Croix. I mean, that's our responsibility to ensure that things are done responsibly, right? So we have to have something there.
Yeah, in the NH2 zone, it's really to deal with the worst storm surge flooding. So from that perspective, it should protect the municipality in that way, where it's more of a concern, and I think the higher priority is important, is where you have people living, because those people can be trapped. Now, hopefully it's a responsible company. big storm surges coming, they're like, don't come to work that day. So I think, to your concern, I think the NH2 zone addresses it, and it will also probably make them feel like, we're not being limited in our development other than anything we would already do just as responsible landowners and investors.
That's the problem with the case anyways. They're going to consider all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's a problem, because I think that section of the wharf will never be built on.
Yeah.
That's the working area.
Yeah.
So, they're just going to keep putting layers of asphalt on it. And, but at some point in time, they will have to raise it, but
Yeah.
by then they're going to have to raise the wharf too, so.
Yeah.
you
And
know.
if they raised it, then they'll meet the conditions, and who knows when that'll be. There might be a new zoning bylaw by then anyways.
Yeah, so, but that industrial zone, there's only the two in the entire municipality.
Yeah.
We're forcing everybody to go there that's classified industrial. And then if we make it difficult for them to go there, we're basically chasing good paying jobs out of the municipality. So,
Do you, I have Mark Clark's contact information. Would council like me to reach out
Yes,
to them?
yes,
Okay.
I would.
Maybe Xander, you can do a virtual meeting. I wouldn't mind just sitting on it.
Sure,
It's
yeah.
just, it won't provide a lot of insight except to be another set of ears.
Okay. I'll send him an email tomorrow.
and the other one that I was going to try to get there was Steve Lewin. And he is there supposedly one day a week, but I think he spends more time in Cuba than he does there this time of year.
The workload always seems to be down there in the winter, doesn't it? Sorry, council, any other concerns?
I was looking at Bayview Boulevard, which I always confuse with Bayview Drive. When you look at Bayview Boulevard, there's a number of lots coming off it, and I see it listed. It was on the map earlier, Bayview, I say Boulevard. So I'm just wondering, as they develop those lots, does that become a public road through there? It's listed on the map.
Bayview Boulevard, is it currently private or public?
Well, that's my question.
I've got to be honest, I'm not sure which one Bayview is.
So it extends from through the old Clybrig property, I guess.
The old Clybrig property. Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's an easy thing to get mixed up, Bayview
Yeah,
Boulevard and
yeah.
Bayview Drive.
No, I know the one you're talking about. I've walked on that road before. So if it's really for any road in the municipality, for new lots to be developed off of it, it needs to meet the regulations in the subdivision bylaw. So it's a pretty good road. I think it's a private road currently.
It's a good road because it was built by the railway workers.
Okay.
Under Van Horn, Irish slaves and indentured people and Native Americans.
Yep.
Native peoples built that road. That's why it's in such good shape.
Yeah. And I think there's also, realistically, that area is under a homeowners association, and I think probably has tighter, stricter rules than the municipality would have. But for new, like if let's say that developer said, I want to, the top lot there, which is a field now, they would have to bring at least that portion of the road. It might not be a ton of work, but they would basically have to bring it up to the current standards.
It'd be To be a public road though, not a private road.
Yeah. There are standards for private roads too now.
Yeah.
My guess is that road would meet them already.
But so you know, council, if I was a developer and I put in the world's best road that you could accept, you don't have to accept it. It just doesn't automatically happen. You have to get the approval of a council to accept it.
Yeah.
Even if they meet your standards. So for instance, let's say someone puts in the right road, but it's way down by Bayside Hall. It's a long way for municipal crew to go. And if it's only 2 houses on it, you wouldn't get enough property taxes in 100 years to pay for the cost of running back and forth. So that might be a case where you think it's not financially feasible. It's not in the best interest of the remaining taxpayers, just as an example. So it's, just to say roads have to be offered to council. It's always up to them to accept or reject them.
Yeah. And we would all of us will give you a recommendation.
So if it's already on the map, it's already a road.
It's already a road, but that doesn't mean that new lots can be created off of it.
Or that it's a public road.
Yeah,
It's a private road. There's lots of private,
Yeah.
There's lots of private roads
So
that are
much
still on
of,
maps.
much of the old rail bed is being converted to private roads. I'm just wondering if there's anything about that in our zoning bylaw, whereas those areas are now part of the municipality of St. Andrews.
The municipal plan, I don't think the zoning bylaw is addressing it, but the municipal plan, there's a recreation corridor, I think does go along the old rail bed. It's obviously complicated where not all of those properties are still owned by CN. They've been turned over. But I think there are policies in the municipal plan that do say where possible, these should become recreation assets, but it's hard to actually do it in practice because it requires you've been through the process, yeah. The municipal plan definitely supports it.
Pursuing active transportation routes,
Definitely.
not necessarily roads, but maintaining routes and perhaps. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was a recommendation from the community.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would take fairly strong municipal action to really do it. And with zoning, you could sort of say, well, you can only use this for green space, but that doesn't mean that the private property owners have to. Yeah.
I guess on the question of roads, there are some public roads in the municipality that the province has stopped taking care of. I don't know what will happen to them eventually. One of them's been discussed here, Dock Road. I think that was a public road at one time. And they stopped looking after that. But there's a very long one that goes from Fry Road at the head of Limeburner Lake. It's called the Greenlaw Road. It goes out towards the Greenlaw Farm. I've never gone out to see how close I can get to the farm, but I've scooted up it a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not doing any maintenance on it, not a thing. So
no, we looked at those roads and zoning and basically said, and there's very confusing guidance that we get from the province on those roads and whether we have to issue permits when people otherwise are allowed to develop or we can't. We've heard both things from the province, and they need to clarify their own regulations. But for the purposes of zoning, when those roads exist, creating new lots off of them is really impossible because you're basically adding to more people are going to be driving down this road that the province isn't maintaining. So unless the municipality wants to take on that road, which it might not want to do, you definitely don't want to encourage development there. That doesn't mean that people who aren't already there, they can continue to use the road. And it depends all over the place. I know some roads like that, the private people are just maintaining them themselves. Some places, the province is still plowing them for some reason. So it's really, I will lay this one entirely on the province and hope that they come up with a fix for it. But municipality should not encourage development on those roads. Any more questions? So I think I have my marching orders. I've got work to do, and I'll go do it and send, I guess it'll be draft 2, along with the report saying here's what we did, and we'll go from there.
So Xander, for timing purposes, I'm assuming you can't get it done the next couple of days, or could you? Not holding you to that, I'm just trying to get our timeline.
I think it's possible.
So if we bring this forward for this upcoming meeting on Monday, maybe do, what do we call it, the strikeout edition or whatever, where you show what you've changed. And then we could set our meeting of hearing of objections for the zoning bylaw before we do first reading. Go ahead.
We would send it to PAC first.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, so get that, but we need council's
Council has
blessing,
to request
so
the
to
views
speak.
of
Yeah,
PAC.
plus the views of PAC with the document you're happy to send to them, I guess, essentially. And we'll be and if you do it, we're meeting on the 18th, I think is the date. And then they can look at it in February.
Yeah. And I think I wasn't here at any of the previous meetings to talk about the municipal plan, but they were very, very supportive of the municipal plan. They had a few little language changes. There were a few little language changes that we got from the province, a few through the public feedback, but they're all very minor. It could be made at any reading for the municipal plan. There'll be a few map tweaks based on the zoning map changes, but also very minor. It's really just those patchy areas.
So once we get that version, we'll send it to PAC, and then we can schedule the hearing of objections before we do first reading or anything like that, right?
Sorry, we're both reaching. Yeah, once we get the views from PAC.
Right.
Yeah, we could send it.
Could we set the hearing? No, I guess we need the views of PAC first.
Yeah, the reason,
Because in case of
Significant
change.
changes.
yeah, PAC might, if they want to see changes, then we should address those before the public hearing date is set in case they're substantial.
Mhm.
I just want to mention, Xander said that a few times tonight, and for those who don't know why, it's because if there are significant changes after one public hearing of objections, we have to have another public hearing of objections.
Yeah, with the notice period and everything.
Yeah.
So everything continues on course, so to speak. We hopefully will do our hearing, set our hearing of objections in March, and probably for later March.
So just to clarify in terms of the timeline, because you said we were meeting on the 18th, but we're meeting on the 17th, council's meeting,
PAC's would be on the 18th,
but
but
PAC,
council's on the 17th
okay.
because the 16th is a holiday.
Okay. And on the 16th, we would just be we wouldn't be discussing the document.
We should get a draft on for this coming Monday.
Oh, for this coming Monday.
Yeah.
For the second.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
to send to PAC, so you're
Okay.
comfortable with the,
Okay.
and
got
again,
it.
changes can still be made, by the way, but it's just,
Yeah.
this will be council's had a kind of their first kick of the can at big
Yeah.
items they can send to PAC. Means you guys can still make changes.
And the
over next
nice
few
thing about
weeks.
PAC too, if PAC, if we have changes that we kind of catch in between now and when PAC reviews it, we can say to PAC, you should advise council to make this change. And then it just goes with the normal process. It's not going to be a substantial change.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
If there's nothing else, I guess we're done.